Good evening, everyone. We want to thank you for attending tonight's commission meeting. At this time, I will ask the clerk to announce the meeting and call the roll.
Roll call. Walker.
Here.
Townsend.
Here.
McKiernan.
Here.
Mugia.
Here.
Maddox.
Here.
Kane. Here. Markley.
Here.
Walters. Philbrook.
Here.
Holland.
Here. All right, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. This evening, the invocation is being given by me. So let us stand for the invocation, remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Good and gracious God, we thank you for this day that you have made, for the rain to nurture the earth. Not too much rain. We ask that you will watch over those who are in need, watch over our whole community, and that the decisions we make tonight might benefit everyone. We ask this in your holy name. Amen.
God bless the Kansas City Royals.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Mr. Walker added the addendum. We have one goal tonight, and that is to be home for the 8:07 pitch of the Kansas City Royals. So I'd ask everyone to behave accordingly. We do have, I do want to ask Ms. Cobbins, are there any revisions to tonight's agenda?
There are no revisions to the agenda.
All right, we will begin, hold on. We will begin tonight's agenda with a presentation being given by the Mid-America Regional Council representatives on transportation and corridors. And we want to thank Mark for being here. We've been working on a series of what I would call in-services in some respects in terms of educating the public as well as our commission on all of the activities the Mid-America Regional Council is involved in and the ways that it helps Wyandotte County and the way Wyandotte County partners with them. So I'll turn it over to you, sir, for your introduction.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Members of the commission, thank you for having us out. We're very happy to share with you tonight work that we've been doing at MARC related to the region's transportation needs. I'm Ron Ackelpool. I'm the new Director of Transportation at MARC, although I've been at MARC for a number of years before taking this new position. And I'll walk through a brief presentation on some of our current transportation issues and initiatives and how they relate to work in Wyandotte County and with the unified government. And then my colleague Dean Catterdahl will talk more specifically about some specific corridors here in the Wyandotte County area. So I wanted to start by just outlining MARC's role in transportation in the region. We've got a unique designation under federal transportation policy. We're the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which means that we're responsible for developing the region's long-range transportation plan. We're responsible for facilitating decision-making about federal funding for transportation projects that are implemented in the region. And so our two main products that we develop are the long-range transportation plan and what we call the Transportation Improvement Program, which is a list of projects that do receive federal funding. We also have other roles in transportation in the region in terms of some operations that we conduct. We have been working on the Operation Greenlight traffic signal coordinating system, of which Wyandotte County and Unified Government are a member, and we also have had the rideshare program in the region for a number of years. The area that we conduct our transportation activities in is an 8-county region, 4 counties in Kansas and 4 in Missouri. On the Kansas side, we're in Leavenworth County, Wyandotte County, Johnson, and recently Wyandotte County. On the Missouri side of the line, we're in Clay, Platte, Jackson, and Cass counties. One of our key responsibilities is really to provide a forum for decision makers in the region to come together and help us develop our transportation policies and plans and programs. And in order to accomplish that, we've got a pretty complicated committee structure at MARC. Our board of directors oversees all of the work of MARC, but we have the Total Transportation Policy Committee that is our primary transportation policy committee, and then under that we have a host of planning and programming committies, and unified government leaders and staff are in leadership positions on several of those committees. So some of the key ones, your county engineer, Bill Heatherman, is the chair of our highway committee, or the Kansas co-chair of our highway committee. Dr. McKiernan is co-chair for the Regional Transit Coordinating Council. Lydiana LaBoy is moving into the position of chair of our Operation Greenlight Steering Committee. And I've not listed the Technical Forecast Committee as a transportation committee, but Rob Richardson is the chair of that committee at MARC. So your folks are deeply involved in the planning work that we do around transportation. As I said, one of the key products that we develop for the region is the Long-Range Transportation Plan. In our region, it's called Transportation Outlook 2040. This is a plan that we update every 5 years, and we're right in the middle of the update process for it right now. We will be finishing that work by June of next year, so we're in the early stages of drafting the chapters of the plan. This plan really identifies transportation needs in the region for all sorts of modes of surface transportation. It identifies places where we have gaps and strategies to fill those gaps. And it sets the policy framework for how we prioritize federal funding in the Transportation Improvement Program. Some of the key challenges that we're facing as we're working on this update of the plan are incorporating some of the really major demographic shifts that we're seeing in the region in terms of the population aging, some generational changes that are taking place. Still dealing with not a very robust funding picture in the future, and a very constrained fiscal environment for the foreseeable future. And strong desire from the public that talks with us about the plan, about providing more modal options in the region in terms of bicycling and pedestrians and transit options, in addition to the strong desire to keep our region's roads and bridges in good shape, which is a challenge under the constrained fiscal environment that we're facing. In terms of regional funding, we administer several programs through the Federal Highway Administration and assist in programming some Federal Transit Administration funds. In the last several years, the unified government has received about $28 million through our Surface Transportation Program, our Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Program, and various other federal funds that we administer. We're in the very last stages of completing a funding cycle through 2018, and in that, unified government's positioned to receive about a little over $11 million in funding for projects through these three programs. We also have a program called Planning Sustainable Places, which is really planning grants and implementation funds for livable communities type projects. We've completed a call for projects, and we're currently evaluating applications for those funds right now, and unified government does have an application, a strong application in that category. And then we are also conducting a call for projects for Section 5310 funds. These are funds for mobility needs for older adults and people with disabilities. In addition to our funding work, we do planning in a variety of modes. I think freight transportation is a particularly unique issue in the Kansas City area. We're, given our geographic location and how significant the freight industry is to our manufacturing base and to our regional economy. We've worked over the years with an organization that we helped create called Kansas City SmartPort to really draw attention to the freight and logistics industry in the region, and recruiting companies from outside of the area to the Kansas City area. They've been working hard in Wyandotte County, focusing on automotive projects and e-commerce projects in the region. And so we work with them through our Goods Movement Committee. We've developed several iterations of strategic freight plans for the region, and those are also reflected in the Long-Range Transportation Plan for the region. We spend a lot of our staff time and committee time looking at public transportation needs in the Kansas City area. Frankly, for a region our size, we feel like the transit services that we have to offer in the community are about half of what they should be. And so we have been working closely with the ATA, with Wyandotte County Transit, Johnson County Transit, and other other officials around the region to develop some quick win implementation activities to really bolster public transit in the region. As I said, Commissioner McKiernan co-chairs the Regional Transit Coordinating Council, which is a joint body with Mark and the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority. And in the last year that it's been created, has really seen a lot of remarkable early successes in making progress in improving our transit systems in the region. We've made great strides in developing a regional transit pass. We're looking at improving that. We've helped to bring all of the transit route information in the region into the Google trip planning system, so riders can get information about, real-time information about transit operations in the region on their smartphones or computers through Google. We're currently working to rebrand the transit services in the region, and we'll be providing more information about that in the coming months, and developing a regional transit website to provide a single point of information for travelers in the community about the transit services that we do have to offer, in addition to planning to expand those and improve them in the future. We've worked on a number of implementation projects. So Mark's not just involved in planning. We do implementation activities as well. I'm sure you're all very familiar with the Tiger Grant that we received as part of the Recovery Act in 2009. It was a $50 million grant. $10.5 million of that went to improvements in Wyandotte County, mainly along the State Avenue corridor, including some state-of-the-art transit centers that Emmerich was very responsible for helping to deliver. They're kind of showcases for the region. We've recently gotten word that we've received a second Tiger Grant. This is a planning grant with a goal of developing implementation plans to double the number of jobs accessible by transit in the region in the next 10 years. And this is going to be work that we'll be kicking off probably early in 2015 with an 18-month schedule. Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas are going to be very involved in the plans for this project. We're particularly focused on suburban employment centers, so recent developments by Cerner and several places in the region are going to be a particular focus of this project. We also, as I said earlier, operate a project called Operation Greenlight. This is a system that coordinates traffic signal timing at around 700 intersections throughout the region. Unified Government is the third largest jurisdiction of the 20 members of Operation Greenlight, with 64 intersections that we're currently working on. We have received some funding to make some additional capital improvements in Wyandotte County on Rainbow and on 7th Street to provide some additional surveillance cameras to help with the monitoring traffic on those corridors. And as I said earlier, Lydiana LaBoy is moving into the chair position for the Operation Greenlight Steering Committee. This project is significant because it relates to our air quality needs in the region, and you'll hear more about that from other presenters from Mark in the future. But in the late 90s, we were transitioning out of air quality non-attainment. We're transitioning back into that in the next couple of years. But traffic signal coordination is one of the more cost-effective ways of reducing emissions that lead to ground level ozone, which is our main air quality issue in the Kansas City area. So in addition to that work, we've got a lot of other irons in the fire. We're completing an asset management strategic plan for the region, which is giving us a better sense of what we're facing in terms of cost to maintain our roads and bridges and transit infrastructure throughout the region. We're completing work this year on a regional bikeway plan, which is identifying on-road and off-road facilities to move people by bikes around the region. We will be updating a complete streets policy that we adopted a couple of years ago as part of our last long-range plan update, and then a number of other issues that we continue to work on, which I'd be happy to come back and talk about later. But monitoring the time, I'd like to invite Dean Catterdahl to the podium to share with you work that we've done recently on some of the key corridors in the county.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks to the commission, and thanks for putting us first, so it won't be our fault if you don't make it to the opening pitch. So I'm going to talk a little bit about corridors and corridor planning, Really, over the last few years, Mark's become put more focus, emphasis on key transportation corridors, and kind of around sort of 4 mutually supportive objectives. One is kind of following up on what Ron said, is to increase transportation options for folks within the metropolitan area, with particular emphasis on public transportation, which needs to be made more robust than it is now. Second is to foster redevelopment along the corridors, particularly in the urban core areas of the metropolitan area. We think the corridors are a really good location where that can occur. Thirdly, create vibrant places along these corridors where people can work and live and play, and finally, to connect these, and kind of relates to another program Ron mentioned, connect people, residents within the region to jobs in the region as well. One of the reasons we got this planning grant Ron mentioned is only about, I think, 18% of the jobs in the metro area are connected with public transportation. We're one of the lowest in the metropolitan area, or lowest in the nation in that regard, so we hope to increase that. So this work has grown out of something called Creating Sustainable Places. We got a HUD regional planning grant 4 years ago. It ran for about 3 years, and we did work in corridors and developing tools and other projects. And although the grant has ended, the work continues on. Commissioner Walters is on our Creating Sustainable Places committee. One of the things they do is they're the ones that review those Planning Sustainable Places grant projects that Ron mentioned, and which will be coming up here pretty quickly. One of the projects, so we did work in several corridors in the metropolitan area, and one of them was State Avenue. I think you've seen probably a lot of this, so I don't want to spend too much time going over old territory, but basically the UG got a $150,000 grant to sort of build on the comp plan that you had adopted 2 or 3 years ago, or maybe it's been 4 years ago now, with this particular focus along State Avenue and a particular focus on development. What kind of development would be feasible along this area? And so they started out with a number of locations along State Avenue, and then they narrowed them down based on interest of developers or the property owners in actually pursuing development and what the impact would be. And then they picked 2 projects. One project areas, one was downtown Kansas City, Kansas, and one was out at 75th and State Avenue, kind of between the community college and the old Smith Toyota dealership. And then we developed more specific plans and economic performance for those 2 projects, and I think you've seen some of that work in past meetings. And then we did that in several other communities. What I wanted to take most of my time, but not too much time, is actually talking about the tools we've developed over the last 3 or 4 years that help with this project, but also is available to local communities to use to help evaluate or facilitate development in your communities. And so there's kind of a suite of tools. We're still kind of test driving them in different communities, and we'd love to work with the unified government on these as well. So probably the most important one we've developed is called Envision Tomorrow, and this is is a marriage of traditional sort of land use planning with an economic pro forma. And so you're not just planning for some pretty buildings, but those buildings have actually gone through an economic pro forma and they're economically feasible. They kind of help provide a common basis for the city and the developer to talk about a project, to consider incentives and how that would affect the project, or maybe some regulatory changes, or whatnot to what makes the project feasible, but also work for the city. It also helps in explaining projects to the public. Why are we doing it this way? Well, there may be economic reasons behind that. And that was a lot of our emphasis over the last 3 or 4 years. So this is a tool that either Mark can help the UG apply, or we can train folks at the UG of how to use it. It's pretty simple, based on GIS, that ArcGIS, which the UG uses, and just an Excel spreadsheet with a pretty detailed economic pro forma on it. The next tool I wanted to mention was visualization. This is something we heard. Everybody would like to see what these projects look like as they develop, and in specific locations, but it can be pretty expensive to do. So we've been attempting to develop the capacity to either provide this kind of visualization through Mark, or train staff so they could do it in-house. Also, we've created an online database of projects from around the metropolitan area, over 100 projects, so you can go in and look and say, well, gee, I'd like to look at what a typical 4-story apartment complex in a more urban setting would look like, and it'll pull up 4 or 5 projects from around the metro area, and you look at them and it has all the specifics about the project, and you can even go visit them since they're local projects. So I want to just give a brief demonstration of kind of what we're talking about, and I think you've seen this. So this is the 75th Street and State Avenue site, the old Toyota dealership. And actually, there was a whole fly-through. I'm not taking your time with this, but then this is how this could look. And this project was developed through using Envision Tomorrow, and so there's a market base for these projects. These, at the rents we could expect to get, and the costs for building such thing over a phased period, this was felt to be a reasonable project, a reasonable objective for development in this area. And so that's what we're trying to do. There are some additional tools. We have what's called a Sustainable Code Framework. It's basically a database of not only those projects I mentioned, but code strategies for dealing with everything from parking downtown to mixed-use developments to, so how can you make sure your codes are facilitating the kind of development you want? Because that's what we hear a lot from developers. Oh, it's so hard, I got to get variances and this. If your codes are more conducive to the kind of development you want to see, it can make development much easier. So there's a database of how other communities have dealt with these codes. We have a suite of market data. We use ESRI's Community Analysts, which breaks up the market into 40 segments, and we can analyze the market in a specific area. We have information through CoStar on rents and vacancies in specific areas, apartment rents. All this is information that can go into figuring out what is the market in a particular area and what will we have to deal with. We also created a natural resource inventory of the entire metro area. So when you're thinking about a project, what natural assets might be there, and how do you want to make that project work with the assets instead of maybe damaging the assets, or maybe even restoring. A lot of folks are into restoring streamways now and that as an amenity for a project, and this will identify where those opportunities are. And then a site for creating indicators so you can track progress either of your community or a specific area in your community. So there's a number of tools. These can be used in a variety of ways. Here's a few. One is if you're considering a plan for a specific corridor or area, we can help using these tools to do a preliminary assessment. It might help refine the scope if you're going to go out for a consultant to do a more in-depth, complete plan. It can also help support the consultant themselves with market data and other kinds of information they'd want to use to do a development. The second one, proposed development assessment, this is where we've been using and been asked to use these tools the most, is when you have a specific proposal from a developer, use particularly Envision Tomorrow, but some of the other tools to assess, is that project feasible, or they're coming in and saying they need a $2 million incentive? Does that make sense, given the economics of the project? And so it puts you and the developer on kind of the same page, so you're talking about the same thing. And communities have found that pretty helpful. Another thing is site. If you have a specific site that you're trying to get a developer to get interested in, we can use some of these tools to help put together a marketing package to show to developers, provide to developers, and then you can just use it to kind of identify community trends in that. So you have a little book at your place, I think. This describes the tools and some of the other, yep, that's it, and some of the other creating sustainable places activities we've undertaken. But I think with that, Ron and I'd be happy to answer questions, given what's coming.
Are there any questions? Commissioner Philbrook?
Actually, it's a statement. I really do appreciate all the hard work you do at Mark, because when we come over there, I should say, when people come to you and ask you for help, you guys try to figure out a way to do it. Especially with Wyandotte Economic Development. I know they're using you more and more, and appreciate that.
That's what we're there for, is to help folks across the region. So,
Thanks.
thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, well, I want to thank you both for coming tonight. A lot of great work goes on at Mark. I think this highlights it as well. A great partner for us, and I think we do have a strong role in it. We are the third largest municipality in the metro area, and that gives us a lot of responsibility in terms of working on this, but also we benefit greatly from the work at Mark and really appreciate your expertise. So thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. We look forward to working on projects in the future.
All right, thank you. All right, that brings us to our second item, is an item for reappointment of Judge Maurice
Move for
Ryan
approval.
as Administrative Judge for Municipal Court. It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, roll call.
Roll call: Walker,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
McKiernan,
Aye.
Mugia. Aye. Maddox,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Markley,
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
The vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
Judge Ryan, we appreciate your being here tonight, and we appreciate your commitment to continue to serve our community in this role. Thank you. All right, we now have our consent agenda. Does any
Move
member
for
of the
approval.
commission, staff, or citizen wish to set aside any item on tonight's consent agenda?
Let's play ball.
Are there any? There are very few citizens here tonight, but we appreciate those who are here. Let the record show I see no one stepping forward to remove an item. It is properly moved and seconded. Roll call.
Roll call: Walker,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
McKiernan,
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Maddox,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Markley,
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
The vote is 9-0. That motion carries.
Play ball.